Hi, this is Pastor Josh, and I just want to thank you for watching or listening to these teachings. Our hope is that through these teachings that you would learn more about God and grow closer to Him in relationship. But we also hope that these would be an additional teaching to what you already receive in your church home. If you don't have a church home, we would love to have you here at Cornerstone. So we do pray that through these teachings that you would hear God through the proclamation of His Word.
Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. All right, everyone. So in the year 2000, Pastor John Piper, a pastor from Minnesota, he was giving a message at a conference of where there was gathered 40,000 college students. Okay, that's a lot of college students. So he's giving this message to the college student, and in that he gave this illustration that I want to bring up today. He gave this illustration that he had read from the Reader's Digest. So all y'all who remember the Reader's Digest that you used to get and read, I remember my dad always had that, and I didn't know what it was, but he read from the Reader's Digest an article, and the article it was titled this: Start Now, Retire Early. Start Now, Retire Early. It was from February 1988. It was about a couple named Bob and Penny and how they had retired early because they started early. They had retired early. I'm thinking young 50s, if I remember, young maybe 40s, but they had retired early in life. And so the Reader's Digest article goes on to talk about, hey, this is what they did with their life after that. They went and bought a boat, a really nice boat, and they would go cruising on this boat. And then they bought a house by the beach, and they were just enjoying it. It just goes into how much they were enjoying all these retirement pleasures. And then it said in there also that they collected shells, seashells. So they would go on their beachfront, and they would just go collect seashells all day with their retirement. And John Piper was telling these young college kids that this is a great tragedy. He was telling them, do not listen to the American dream in which Reader's Digest gives you. Do not do this that they're doing. And he says it in this way. He said, this couple in the last years of their lives are spending their time on their boat and spending time collecting shells. And before you know it, they will die and meet God face to face and give an account for their life. And they're going to say, hey, God, look at our boat. Look at how great our boat is. Or the foolishness of this. Hey, God, look at how magnificent, how wonderful, how great, how grandeur our collection of seashells are, God. When they spent 20, 30, or plus years doing those things, wasting the end of their lives. John Piper would tell this young group of 40,000 college kids, do not waste your life on this. Now I bring that up to you because it is my responsibility to proclaim to you the Word of God. And this morning, according to Psalm 90, Psalm 90's message to you and I is for us not to waste our lives, just as John Piper told these people, that we would not waste our lives spending time doing meaningless, vain things, but that we would do what would matter. Now, everyone, this psalm applies to each and every one of us. It applies to the young children in the room. First grade, kindergarten, second grade, it applies to teenagers in the room. It applies to college kids and young adults all the way up to you senior saints. To not waste our lives. For you young children, you may say, well, I can think about that another time. I'm pretty young. When I get older, I'll think about it. We're not promised tomorrow. Amen? So please listen to to the adults and to your family, your older family, to think about your life. If you're a young teenager in the room, 100 years ago or 150 years ago, you probably would have been married and have kids by now. And just so you know, the word teenager is never found in the Bible. You find child and you find adult. In the last 100, 150 years, we've created this term of teenager, of adolescence, and we've extended the age in which a person is a child. So nowadays, you find 20-year-olds and even young 30-year-olds who are still acting as children when we're called to be adults. So, young people, listen. It is not too early. The time is now for you to begin to think about not wasting your life. And you senior saints on the other end of the spectrum, where you say, I may only have a year left, I may only have a month left, I may only have a week left. Who knows? It's too late now. I've already wasted it. No. You don't know how much time you're promised for tomorrow. Yes, time goes by real quickly, but we do not know how long we have. And so, as long as God has put breath in your lungs, it is your responsibility now, today, to change the course, to change the direction of your life, to say, okay, God, today I'm changing directions. To not waste my life. I confess to you the past, but I give to you the future. And I will not waste the rest of my life doing nothing on meaningless items. God has called us to change the direction, to not waste our lives in Psalm 90. So here we go, everyone. Psalm 90, if you look at the beginning in your Bible, you probably see here that it says something, a prayer of Moses, maybe. This is the only psalm that we have who we believe the author is Moses. Possible it may not be, but it's likely it is Moses, which then means this. This psalm, Psalm 90, is the oldest psalm in the book of Psalms, everyone. You put that out on your notes. I have this on my notes. I don't know where I wrote it from, but it was a long time ago that I wrote that. This is the oldest psalm, if Moses indeed wrote this. Which then means this, y'all. Psalm 90, those words that you have before your face, were recorded 3,400 years ago. 3,400 years ago, this was recorded. Now you're saying, okay, that was a long time ago. What about it? Listen to me. 3,400 years ago, when God inspired Moses to share these words and to write down these words, He also provided a civilization, a people, who would take this word and preserve it. Follow me, y'all. 3,400 years ago, there's a lot of things back then that we do not know about today because they've been destroyed. But God provided a people that would protect Psalm 90 3,400 years ago, and through each and every year, through all the wars. Think about this. Why? Well, one reason that matters to us of why He did that was because He knew in the year 2020, in the month of October, that you would be sitting in this building and we would be hearing from this word, Psalm 90. 3,400 years ago, God knew and He provided this for who? You and I. So, everyone in the room, Psalm 90 is for you and I because it's been preserved for you and I. And we could have preached from anything else, but the Lord has brought us to Psalm 90, so that's where we are. It is for you and I. If you don't believe that, there's nothing else I can do. I can't prove that to you besides just say that. So let's look at our text. If you look at the first 11 verses, here's what you're going to get. You're going to get an elevation of God. You're going to get a separation of God. A declaration of who God is in comparison to who we are as humans, everyone. Let's look at Psalm 1, or 90, verse 1. He begins here by saying, Lord, what a great place to start your day. What a great place to start this morning. Lord, to be reminded and to say, you are in fact God and we are not. You are the Creator and we are not. You have given us breath in our lungs, we did not give us breath. You have provided the opportunities in our lives, the people we marry, the children we have, the jobs we have, the resources we have is by your hand. So let us begin rightly by saying, Lord, teenagers, write that on your hand and on your forehead so that when you wake up and you go to the mirror, it says, Lord, so that you remember you exist because of the Lord. It goes on to say, Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. In other words, maybe your Bible says refuge. You have been our refuge. You have been our safe place. You have been our protection. You have been our home. You have been where we find life. Now, if Moses wrote this, then this is referring to the wilderness in which they spent 40 years wandering in this desert place, setting up a tent, setting down the tent, walking in the desert. But in the desert, God provided them a cloud for the day. And in the desert, God provided them a fire for the night. He was their dwelling place. He was their refuge. He was their safe place, despite the fact that they were wandering in the wilderness. If this refers to Babylon, when Israel had been exiled into Babylon, when they had lost their country, and now Babylon is over them, same meaning. That in the midst of this wilderness, you are the only place that we can find a safe place, Lord. I'm a young man, relatively, for some of us, right? I'm a young man. Unless you're hanging out with teenagers, then they call you an old man. The bald head doesn't help, by the way. But think of this. As a young man, I'm around young families a lot. And around those young families, there are young children. Lots of time, toddlers. Yesterday, we were at a birthday party with a bunch of toddlers. It was a little girl's four-year birthday party. And oftentimes, what you see with toddlers, they go through these stages and phases in life where they're just open and say hi to everybody, but then all of a sudden they become regarded and shy. And so you can go up and say, hey, how are you doing? And what do? They run away and they go behind mommy or daddy. And so they grab onto mommy or daddy's leg and they're hiding behind them. Why? Because they know this is a refuge. This is my dwelling place. This is the safe place. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want. But I know my mom or my dad, they love me. They may not think this, that they feed me and they change me and they take care of me and they sing with me and they play with me. They don't think that. They just think love. This is where I know I am loved and protected and safe. And so they run behind their parent and hold on to them as a dwelling place, as a refuge. That is the picture here that he gives. Lord, you have been our dwelling place, the place that we run to, the place that we have safety and life and home. The house is not the home. You are our home, God. So we run to you in the midst of the wilderness, in the midst of brokenness, or whether it's the midst of exile. You're the only safe place that we have. And as you turn your eyes to the news today, as you turn your eyes to social media today, and all you see is the presidential campaigns and the Republicans and the Democrats and the chaos that's happening not only in our country, but the riots that are happening all over the world, and you look at the disasters of floods and tornadoes and all these other things, seems as if we're living in the wilderness. For you younger folks, going to school can be a wilderness. As you're surrounded by kids who make fun of you or ridicule you if you don't wear the right clothes or say the right things or don't watch the same shows as them. So from the young child, again, all the way up to us, as to y'all who are senior saints, the refuge that we have, the one and only place where we have a dwelling place is God Himself. That's what He says. So Moses says, you've been our dwelling place in all generations. 100 years ago, the church found their dwelling place not in America, not in Europe, not in China, but in God. 1,000 years ago, in God. Today, you and I are called to find our refuge place in the midst of the chaos of our country. In who? God, our refuge, our safe place. He's our help. He's our hope. He's the only one that we have. It goes on to say in verse 2, before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. What beautiful words he has written, that God has provided us. It says, God, before you brought forth the mountains, before you spoke and said, mountains rise out of the ground, before you said, hey, let there be dirt, let the water separate from the ground, and before you said, hey, let there be the world, you existed. You existed. He says, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. So he says, before the world began and after the world ends, you are still God. That is good news for us, y'all. That is great, marvelous news. What Moses has done for us, or the psalmist has done for us, is he has separated God from creation. He has separated God from creation. God is greater than all the things of life. He is the one who created it all. Now think about this, y'all. Think about the power that God has for him to say, y'all, mountains rise, sun come out, stars stay there, trees rise, be fruitful, animals, horse say neigh, neigh, cow say moo, moo, chicken say bakak, bakak. So God is powerful, but he's creative. God's the one who said to do those things. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to do that. I love to think about the taste buds that we have. We love certain foods. We hate certain foods, don't we? But chocolate ice cream, vanilla ice cream, whatever ice cream you like, when that ice cream hits your tongue, something inside of you shouts with joy, right? Amen? That is because God is powerful and beautiful and creative. And before all that existed, he existed. And he says, I'm going to create this. And so Moses' plea, the psalmist's plea is saying, God, you are greater than all of creation because you're the creator. He says from everlasting to everlasting. There's a difference in eternal and everlasting. Now what he's saying when he says everlasting to everlasting, he is saying, God, you are eternal. That means you have always existed. There was never a time that you didn't exist, and there never will be a time that you won't exist. Everlasting means that you were created at one point, and you will continue on to live forever in one way or another. Guess what, y'all? You and I, we are everlasting. Did you know that? We will exist for all of future time, whatever that looks like. But you and I did not always exist. You and I did not always exist. There was a time in which we were created. It's the same for the devil. He is not eternal. He was created at one point, and he rebelled against God. Revelation says that we will exist. This world that we see will one day burn up, be destroyed. We will be judged. Whether you die now or you die later, you will come to God. How that works, we don't know. It just says he will. And God says, look, you will spend an eternity either with me or away from me, because I am eternal and you are everlasting. So he separates God from creation. He separates God from humanity. And he does it again in verse 3. You return man to dust, he says. You return man to dust. Who does it? God does, not man. God says, I am in control of your life. I am in control of death. The psalmist says, it's you, God, who return humanity to dust. That word return there, to go back to. When you read the book of Genesis, it says that God formed us out of the ground, out of the dust. It says He formed us, or let me rephrase that. He formed Adam, man, the first man. He formed him, and then it says He breathed life into him. He did not have life until the breath came. And He created us to never die. But He said, if you sin, you will die. So we die because we've sinned. And the psalmist says, look, God, you return us to dust. You are the one judging us. And where we came from, we return. It doesn't matter, today if you really look at articles being published and articles and news media, what you will see is that humanity, is seeking to live forever. Did you know that? There's this thing, I can't remember what the word is now. Maybe it'll come to me. Lord, help me. But there's this new goal in life where the technology that we have today is trying to be combined with us so that we create a new sort of human. There's already a lady who has electronic device attached to her, and it helps reveal things to her. And so what they're trying to do now is join technology, computers, and humanity together. Okay? Not separately, to be together and be totally different. And along with that, they're doing all these things with stem cells and using young people's blood and putting it into their own body to bring youth towards themselves. Some of the facial products, it's crazy. Some of the facial products that are out there, they come from babies because they found that certain baby cells bring life, restore your youth. What's happening here in life is that man does not want to die. Man wants to live. Man wants to be God. But it says that God will return everyone to dust. There is no hope for them. They are lost in their foolishness. It says they will return to dust. God will say, return man to dust. It is God who is in charge of life. Say that with me. God is in charge of life. It is not in your own hands. So He separates them from humanity. Let's keep going. Verse 4. For 1,000 years are in your sight, are but as yesterday when it is past, as a watch in the night. In other words, He basically says, God, 1,000 years, they're just like a day to you. Not even a day, they're just like 3 hours, a watch in the night, as they used to watch the night. Think of that. For God, He says like. That's the key word. This isn't a formula, a mathematical formula where it's like, okay, so 1,000 years that we live, God sees that as just one day. That's how easy it is for Him. It's not saying that's a formula. He's saying He is outside of time. He's outside of time. Now that's hard for us to comprehend. I remember years ago I began to ask this question: what is time? Why do we have watches? When did that happen? And I began to see one of the big issues with time back in the past was, let's pretend so you get on a train here at 3 o'clock, and then someone in California gets on a train at, say, 3 o'clock, and we're supposed to meet in the middle. Well, if you know how we have time change throughout? So in California, it's like 1 o'clock. Well, before that, they didn't have that. It was just one constant. Everybody had the same time. So we would have left at 3, but we would have met at the wrong time. I know that's confusing probably, but if you look at the origin of how do we tell time? Well, we just measure. It's a consistent measurement of this going to this and this coming back. And now they have these subatomic particles that they measure. They can measure how many electrons or whatever are going back and forth in 1 second. Or they call it, when this thing goes back and forth 1,000 times or 100,000 times, that's 1 second. Okay? So if you really want to get complicated, I'm not going to do it, but if you really want to go get complicated, go study Albert Einstein and his theory on relativity. I'll give you the illustration real quick, okay, because it's pretty crazy. He says that if you put two humans, so everyone, we're having twins. If you didn't know that, we're having twins, okay? So Rachel has these twins. This is what Albert Einstein said. He said if you took one of those twins and put them in a spaceship, and you left that other twin on Earth, and you let that rocket, and you let that rocket go at the speed of light, so very, very fast, and you let them travel for 40 years, and you brought them back, or let's say 80 years. 80 years, one twin went away and brought them back. They're going the speed of light in that rocket, and they come back at the year 80. His brother would look like an 80-year-old. Bald hair, gray hair, or bald as we age. But the twin would be like 5 years old. And you say, what? How? It has to deal with time. So go study that on your own, okay? Go study it on your own, is what I tell you. But God says this: I created time. It says, you call a day by the sun and the moon. You say, that's one day. But before there was a sun and the moon, I existed. So I exist outside of it. Which is real weird, because that means that he knows and lives, outside of time, but he's in eternity future. Amen? Is that weird? That I know we're okay. Let's press on, because that's blowing my brain up too. Amen? Let's not get too complicated. It just says that he's outside of time, verse 4. Verse 5, you sweep them away as with a flood. They are like a dream, like grass that is renewed in the morning. In the morning it flourishes and is renewed. In the evening it fades and withers. If you've ever been in a flash flood or seen a flash flood, the waters come fast, rushing. And they come and they just destroy everything in the way. That's the picture that he's giving. He says, when the flood's here and things just are gone in a second, that is what you do with life. He says they are like a dream. Our dreams are so rapid, they're so fast. You can have so many dreams in one night, and then they disappear, they're gone, and we have another one the next day, and another one the next day. The author here is saying, hey, that's how fast life is. It's but a dream. And he keeps going. The next one, he says, he talks about grass. Now, back in where they lived, the dew in the morning, it could produce grass, just little pieces of grass, not like a field of grass, just little pieces of grass, just by the dew in the morning, and that grass would sprout up, and then it would be hit all day long by the sun and the wind and the sand. And by the time the evening came, that grass would be beaten up and yellow and dead. It'd be gone just like that. C.H. Spurgeon, they call him the Prince of Preachers. He's a preacher from the 1800s. He's a preacher, one of the last Puritan preachers who had a great move of God in the country of London. Really, the reason you're blessed so much is because of some of the things that he accomplished and did. C.H. Spurgeon, if you don't know him, go study him and go read his book. Go buy a book from C.H. Spurgeon. He writes on Psalm 90, and he says, he gives us this same picture of the grass, and he says, this is what man is. They're sown, they grown, they're blown, they moan, and then they're gone. That's the picture here. It's sown, it's grown, it's blown by the wind, it moans by the pain, and then it's gone. And that is but our life. We're sown into life, we're grown into life, we're blown in life, we moan in life, and then guess what? We're gone, everybody. I'm not trying to talk about death, but that's what God is talking about here. He's saying life is short. Life is short. And His judgment is quick. It comes in a hurry. So be prepared. Verse 7, we are brought to an end by your anger. By your wrath we are dismayed. I feel like that verse, those two verses, he goes on to say your iniquities our iniquities are before you, our secret sins in light of your presence. Verse 9, all our days pass away your wrath. You get again in verse 11, wrath. I feel like that one we should just like copy it and put it out there and hang it up in our house. Because we don't talk about the anger and wrath of God today. Did you know that? When you're scrolling on Facebook, if y'all have Facebook or Twitter or whatever, keep how many times you hear a preacher talking about wrath and anger versus how many times they just talk about, hey, we're here to bless your life. We're here for this and this and this. Well, Moses thought it was needed and God inspiring him to talk about in detail the wrath and anger of God. We talk about it because God talks about it. Did you know that? You sit around the table with your family and with your friends and you talk about the wrath of God and the anger of God because God talks about it. And if you hate me or if your family dislikes you because you talk about it, they're not hating you, they're hating God. Because you're simply telling them what God says. And we have to look at ourselves first, right? This wrath, this anger comes because of what we have done to God. God created us, I wouldn't say perfect, but He created us good and sinless in the beginning. Adam and Eve, do not eat of this tree. If you eat of this tree, there will be a consequence. That consequence is death. My wrath, my anger will come upon you. I don't want that for you. That's what He's saying. I don't want to do this, but if you do, I have no choice but to do this. You hear me? I have no choice but to do this, to honor my name. His wrath. Verse 7. Again, he says, we as humans are brought to an end. You cannot fight God, everyone. God is greater than you. God is greater than the president. God is greater than the greatest empire building people. If you ever think of the people in the past, Hitler, the Russian people. Think of the years before that, Caesar and Rome, all these other leaders. They are all brought to an end under the wrath and anger of God. Did you know that? He's in control. It says we are dismayed. You know our sins. You know the secret sins that nobody else knows. You know God. Israel had sinned. They were denied access to the promised land. So they're wandering through the desert here. And Moses says, oh God, you know our sin. We know that you know. And we know that you're in judgment of us, and there's nothing we can do because you're greater than us. There's nothing we can do because you're greater than us. Israel is not innocent. They have fallen short of God's glory. And everyone, that is the same for us. You and I, we fall short of God's glory. Listen here. God knows our sin. He knows our iniquity. And there's nothing we can do about it right now. At this moment that we're hearing in the Word. It just says that we will be brought to an end because of it. And God's anger and wrath will be poured upon us because of it. Because we have chosen to rebel against Him. Now this doesn't mean that God is mean, that God is hateful. How can a good God do these sorts of things? This is the best way I can put it, okay? God is good. Say it with me. God is good. Now let's do the old routine. God is good, and all the time. Okay. I remember hearing that growing up. I was like, wait, hold up. What'd you say? Let me jump in here. Because I didn't grow up in church. And then I was like, okay, God is good all the time. And all the time, God is good. Then I'd start saying it with the pastor instead of saying it with y'all. God is good all the time. All the time. Here's what this means. God has a design in life. And He created Adam and Eve and creation with a good design, a good plan. And He says, look, do not do this, which means this is not good. It's not going to be beneficial for your lives. It's not going to bring goodness to your life. It's not going to grow you and edify you. It's going to hurt you and destroy you. I am good and I don't want this for you. So, what do? we choose to rebel against God. God, I know you said that, but I think I know how to live life. I think I know how to make the decisions. I think I know how to raise my children. I think I know where to work. I think I know what I can watch on TV. I think I know how I can talk to people. I can design the way of my affairs. And God says, well, when you choose to live in your life and not mine, what you're choosing is something that is not good. Okay? Because only God's way is good. Our way is not. It doesn't matter how much reason we think we have, how knowledgeable we think we are. Yeah, God, you really don't know. We know a little bit more than you. Well, last time someone said that, Job, God came down and said, okay, if you know so much, tell me, what are the number of stars in the sky? Tell me the number of pieces of sand that are on the shore. Tell me what stars are in what place and why they're there. Tell me how the tide of the ocean stays where it is and it doesn't overflow these things. Tell me how much hair is on your hair. Tell me how many freckles that you have. Tell me how many beats are in your heart the last minute. Tell me all these details since you know, since you're so great as a human. You tell me these details. Since you think you're God, tell me. And we have to bow down before God because we don't know these things, right? And we say, God, forgive me. Forgive me for speaking too early. You declare what is good. And if I go astray from that, that is not good. Which means this, y'all. All of us who have fallen short of God's glory, all of us who have sinned, that means we are not good people. We live in West Texas culture where we say they're good people and I'm a good person. No, God says if we haven't followed Him 100% fully all the time, we are not good people. God says we are evil people, wicked people. We say, whoa, murderers and rapists, they're the evil people. God says, no, they are, but so are you. If you haven't committed those crimes, if you've committed those, same thing. He puts us in the same category. If you're a liar or if you're someone who lynches people, you're in the same category because you have not followed God's plan. You have not followed God's plan. And God says, look, everything that I do is good. And when you stray away from that, you're doing what is evil and wicked. Now watch this. I'll just give you a glimpse of why this matters. I'm not going to talk about God's character here. I'm going to talk about His name. I'm going to talk about His family. If you are a follower of Christ, if you love God with all your heart and you trust in Jesus Christ, forgiveness of your sins, you are His family, everyone. So God has a family here that desires and seeks to follow God's way. That is good. Now we struggle, those of us who believe, because we have flesh, this old brokenness that God hasn't yet restored and redeemed. He will one day. Our body's going to die, we're going to be made new. And when that happens, all we will ever do is good. Now, this group over here does not want to do God's will, which is always good, which means this group is a threat to His family. The ranchers, if you're a rancher, where I'm from, the ranching is sheep, not cows. And so when you're ranching sheep, coyotes and mountain lions are a great threat to your sheep. And so you hate coyotes. You hate mountain lions because they destroy your livestock. And when they destroy your livestock, they destroy your livelihood. That is, your ability to put food on the plate for your family and to care for your family with a house and with a car and all those sorts of things. So you hate coyotes, you hate mountain lions, and you seek to destroy them, to get rid of them for the sake of loving your family. Everyone, God's wrath, God's anger, besides His name, comes in part because He loves His family, and He says, look, all you who do not follow my plan, you are a threat to my family. You are trying to harm my family. You are an intruder trying to get into my house, to hurt my children. And as a good God, as a loving Father, I will not let that happen. You hear me? So he will destroy all who are evil and wicked one day. Let's just speed this up 3 times fast. Verse 10 says, the years of our life are 70, and even by reason of strength, 80. So maybe some of us get to live to 70 years old. Maybe some of us 80. If you're older than that, praise God. Praise God. He says, you've had good health and you've been able to live that long, but what is your life? You've worked in life. You've struggled in life. You've had pain in life. You've had people pass away. You've had problems with your community. You've had problems with your friends and your family. So even then, life was full of troubles. Verse 11, he goes on to say, that who considers the power of your anger and wrath according to the fear of you? In other words, he says this, Lord, there is none, not even myself, who truly understands your wrath and your anger. Now I look from a different perspective up here at you than you look at me. And most Sundays I can tell you what God's doing in some of you. I can tell you that the majority of us right now do not consider the power of God's anger and wrath in this moment. Some of you, maybe, partly, but some of us not. And that's not a plea to listen to me, it's a plea to listen to God's Word. I'm just going through the text for you. So watch this. He says here in verses 1 through 11, God, you're greater than all of things. God, you are the one who holds judgment, and your judgment is good and righteous no matter what we think. And we just can't fully comprehend that. We just can't. And he turns it here, and he begins to plead. Verse 12, teach us so, he begins that first word, so, in light of all that, God, in light of your greatness, in light that we can't understand, we need your help. We need you to teach us, to show us, to reveal to us what? To number our days, to not waste our life, everyone. That we may get a heart of wisdom. That is, that we would not waste our lives. In this moment, do not waste the 3 minutes, 5 minutes that we have left. Don't waste it thinking, what am I going to do next? What am I going to go eat? Spend it wisely. Saying, what are the last few words that we are going to listen to in the Scripture? Teach us to number our days. He says, teach us, meaning we have to learn it. It doesn't just come to us, we have to learn it. And the ways these often works is as you're seeking the Lord and you're watching TV and you're watching something that you shouldn't watch, the Scripture comes up. Are your days numbered? Are you living in light of your days numbered? When you die and you give an account for your life, will you say, hey God, remember that show I watched? It's pretty cool, huh? Consider the amount of time in which you are spending on TV and social media and hobbies. Whatever your hobby is, golf, riding bikes, working out, arts and crafts, playing video games. It says, teach us, Lord, to number our days so that when we're playing video games, when we're doing these things, if it is not of you, that you would say, this is not a life that lives in light of eternity. This is not a life in which you have numbered your days. This is a life that you think you're going to live forever, and you're wasting it away. Did you know you can waste your time away with family? That's a key one here. If all you ever do is spend time with your family, playing cards, playing dominoes, reminiscing about the past, eating meals together, if that's all the majority of your life is doing, it can be a waste. A good thing can turn sour fast. So we pray God can help us to consider and to number our days. Oh God, may we not waste it. One of the greatest pleas of my heart for young adults is the busyness of their lives. I see young adults putting their children in every activity possible. Let's do baseball. Let's do basketball. Let's do football. Let's do 4-H. Let's do UIL. Let's go do chess after school. Let's go do robotics. And let's go do this. And let's go do that. Like I said, good things can become sour. And I see so many lives that, I was in youth for several years. Some of my youth have children now. Makes you feel old. I look at all the parents who had all their kids, especially, in Dallas, you have more opportunities. Sunday going to sports activities or to some sort of educational activity and skipping here and there and doing this or that. I don't say this to guilt you. I say this to warn you. Because it breaks my heart. Because years later, it was of no benefit, ultimately, in eternity, for their children. And children, if your desire is, I want to jump into this activity and this activity and this activity and this activity, not that these activities are sinful, but they can be when you think that is where life is. So choose wisely the activities that you spend your life on. As shocking as it is, as good of an athlete that I was, if I could go back and if I knew God the way I do now, I wouldn't do the same things I did. I was in football, basketball, and track. That was it. 3 activities. But even that was too much for me. I don't know what is too much for you. That's between you and God. My plea to parents, my plea to grandparents, as you still continue to put words and ideas and thoughts and lead your children, and my plea to your children are to consider your activities in life. And to consider, to say, are the activities I'm doing of God? Does God want me to do this, or do I just desire to do this? Verse 13, return, O Lord. God, we have sinned against you, in other words. Lord, come back. Have mercy upon us. The psalmist says here, God, there is no other in which we can find hope. There is no other in which we can find forgiveness. There is no other in which we can find life. There is no other in which we have help in life. It is only in you. And we know we failed against you. We know that this is a consequence for what we have done with our lives. But God, we call upon your mercy. We know you're wrathful. We know you're angry. But we also know you're a loving and forgiving and merciful and patient and kind. And you see all things and you desire for us to repent. And so, God, we call out to you. Help us. Please return to us. May it not be too late. Work in our souls. Change our plans. Change our directions. Oh, God, life is short and we need you. Verse 14, satisfy us that we may rejoice. Verse 15, make us glad. It is a running to God because God is our only hope. And we run to Jesus Christ. They didn't know of Christ. They knew the Messiah. And Christ is our hope. Christ is the one who pays for our sin. Christ is the one that everyone, I'll be the first to admit, I've watched too much Netflix in my life. And the Lord has convicted me. He has taught me. And He's still teaching me. Quit watching so much TV. Quit wasting your life, even on educational. I watch so much educational documentaries and learning. And he says, you can waste your life in learning the knowledge of this world. And so he teaches me, and I proclaim to say, the only hope I have is to go to Christ and say, God, I'm so sorry. The time's gone. I can't get it back. All I can do is trust you. Change the direction. Cancel these things. And do what you're calling me to do. The reason we went to a birthday party this weekend was because we believed that's what God wanted us to do. It wasn't like, oh yeah, let's go party. But we considered the scriptures, we considered our lives, and we considered community, and we considered, God, what is it that you want? And the answer we received was, we need to be a part of this. And so I had to call a friend and say, we can't do this. I can't focus on this today. We're doing this. It's hard, but we must live wisely. We must live wisely because we will return to dust, everyone. He goes real quickly. Thank y'all for being merciful in time, y'all. Verse 16, let your work be shown to your servants. Verse 17, let your favor of the Lord be upon us and establish the work of our hands. Establish the work of our hands. He says it twice. In other words, oh God, we've come to you for mercy. You're the only one we can find mercy in. It's in Jesus Christ that we can find forgiveness. And so, Lord, display to the world your greatness in and through us by the way in which we live our lives. We've wasted so much of our lives. Yes, we have sinned and death is coming, and all our hope is to follow Christ, to trust Christ fully, to go in the direction that He desires for our lives. And Lord, our plea is that you would work in our lives so that the fruit of our lives, the activities of our lives, would display how great you are. That people would say, why are you doing that? That people would look and say, that is not something that we normally do. And it would be a display of what you do in lives of broken people. We need you, God. This was Moses' plea for the people of Israel and the people of Israel's plea. We are wandering because of our own sin. Anybody wandering in life? Anybody mess up this week, even as a believer? And you say, God, we've been wandering too long. And Lord, we have no hope but you. You're our only hope. We must trust you. You're the creator, you're the forgiver, you're the savior. That's all we have is you. So we call upon you and your mercy and John 3:16 and your love. We say, forgive us. And then we say, God, teach us. Show us the path. Show us the path in which we are to live. Each and every one of us are commanded this morning, every one of us, myself included, are commanded this morning to change a direction in our lives. It could be the great change of the first time you trust Christ and you say, I'm following Him fully, or it can be the change as a believer where you say, God, I've been following you, but I've failed in this area, and I've got to change direction now because your plan's good and mine's not.